Hello and welcome to this video cast for subscribers to davidicke.com. I'm going to take some questions today across a variety of subjects, and one or two of them are about this period called Christmas. And in so many ways, the way we accept things without question, just because they've always been there, is so indicative of the way we accept life in general and information in general. Oh, the media say it, or I learned it at school, or the politicians say it, the scientists say it, the doctors say it. And so much of what we accept as reality is just an unconscious image for how things are, based on repetition, in effect. And so if you are told as a small child that Christmas is about the birthday of Jesus, and this continues through, especially if you're in a Christian family, then there's a good chance that you will consciously or unconsciously relate Christmas to the birthday of Jesus. But when you look at the background and you look at the evidence, that is nonsense. There's nothing to support that at all. And one of the things that I would suggest that we need to do as a human race is to start questioning what we have been led to believe, questioning what we're told, and see if it stands up to scrutiny. No matter if it comes from a priest or a politician, a scientist, me, anybody. Instead of just accepting things, consciously or unconsciously, check it out, see if it stands up, or see if it makes sense to you, rather than just taking it off the peg, off the shelf, as a fully formed belief system. And questions like why, who, when, how, these simple one-word questions can be devastating to the prevailing perception of everything. So when you look at Christmas, the idea is that it celebrates the birthday of Jesus, who was born on our December the 25th in a manger in Bethlehem, and that all the things that the biblical story says happened. It's interesting that even though the New Age mentality kind of dismisses the Christian version of Jesus, they also have their version of this figure. It didn't exist like that, but it did exist. Well, and does exist, and all these other New Age stories, I think they call him in the New Age, is it Sananda or something like that? And again, it's all just another offshoot of a myth that's gone on for hundreds of years, indeed thousands, in relation to Jesus, and many more in relation to other figures, of which all the basic themes and pillars of the Jesus story were also attributed to long before anyone had ever heard of Jesus. It's a recurring story that is put into different historical settings and given a different name for the deity. So when we look at Christmas, and we think it was kind of a relatively modern thing with the trees and the gifts and all that, in fact, it goes way back into antiquity, not least to a festival in Rome, to their key god Saturn, called Saturnalia. And Saturnalia was a festival of great debauchery, which began on December the 17th and ran for a week. And during that period, the Romans decorated trees in their homes. They exchanged gifts. They had holly, they had wreaths, and they had mistletoe. And a lot more than kissing went on under the mistletoe at the time of Saturnalia. And of course, what happened was that this then was transferred into the Christian belief system. And alongside this Saturnalia was also infused the deity of Mithra, who was given the birthday in Rome of what has become our December the 25th. It was a midwinter festival. And when you see what the Romans and others said about Mithra, in terms of the background to the deity and the story and all that, it is a mirror of what was later attributed to Jesus. Why? Because in 325 AD, at the Council of Nicaea, the Roman Emperor Constantine, who worshipped a deity called Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, was involved in the creation, basically, of the structure and belief system of what we call Christianity. And there was a transfer from the previous, what we would call pagan deities and belief systems and worship of Rome, to Christianity. And the reason that Romans and others had little difficulty with that transfer is because it was the same belief system, the same story, and it was just given a different, if you like, cover, narrative, and went on as before. And then as the centuries have passed, these former pre-Christian pagan festivals, stories, deities, belief systems became accepted purely by repetition to be the Christian story, unique to Christianity. It's not, it wasn't. And so what we call Christmas, where so many around the world believe that they're celebrating the birthday of Jesus, Christmas and what they're celebrating is really a modern version of Saturnalia in Rome, fused in with the worship of pre-Jesus Jesus figures like Mithra, the vine, the only begotten Son, all the same attributes to the pre-Christian deities appeared with the later Jesus. They were just transferred. Well, I don't want to change my religion. Well, we're not changing religion. We're just changing the name of the deity. All right, I can handle that. And what happened is that, for instance, in ancient Babylon, they had a trinity of Nimrod, the father god, Tammuz, the son, and they said the father and son were one, for reasons I'll come to. And the third point of the Babylonian trinity was Queen Semiramis, or Ishtar, also known as, very relevantly, Istar. And they said that when Nimrod died, he became the sun god Baal and impregnated Semiramis, Ishtar, with the rays of the sun to give a virgin birth to Tammuz, the sun. And they said that Tammuz was an incarnation, a reincarnation of Nimrod, thus father and son were one. And when this belief system was transferred to Rome, at least through the movement of people, the Christian version became the father god, Nimrod, the son, Jesus, virgin born. And the third point of the Christian Trinity was the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost, that is symbolized as a dove. And one of the symbols for Semiramis, Ishtar in Babylon, was the dove. And what the new Christianity, I say new, what the rewritten pagan belief system called Christianity then did, was take the attributes of what the Babylonians gave to Semiramis, which was Virgin Mother, Queen of Heaven, etc., and they transferred them to the figure of Mother Mary. Mother Mary is another version of Semiramis, the goddess, in so many ways. And in this way, Christianity was formed, Christianity was created. And there are many people who are Christians today who realize this. And they work their way around it to explain away why this can be, because the historical facts, if you look at them, are facts. So they can't say, oh, it's a load of rubbish. So they have to find a narrative to explain it within still believing in the Christianity that they've always believed in. I mean, there was one Christian article about the real background to Christmas that I was reading this week, that pointed out that this whole thing about Jesus' birthday on December 25th is just made up, because nowhere in the Bible does it point out when this Jesus figure was supposed to be born. And all this thing about shepherds watch their flock by night, this article pointed out that there are no flocks by night in midwinter in that area of the world, because it's too bloody cold. It pretty much ends around October. But even so, they find a way round it to protect the belief system. I spoke at an event once, a long time ago now, and there were quite a few Christians there, because it wasn't, one of my events. I was a speaker at a big event of multiple subjects, and the Christians got around me. Some of them did afterwards, because I, said some of the things I'm saying now, and I pointed out to one of these people, a lady, what I've just said about the background to Jesus and where it came from, and that there were endless other deities before Jesus, of which exactly the same basically was said. And she said, that's not true, that's not true. And then another Christian guy next to her said, actually it is. So she thought about it for a minute, and she said, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because the belief system must be protected from all borders and all challenge, no matter what the evidence. And I found this article this week, again, a Christian article, which is accepting the real background to Christmas and where it came from, but again, doing the mental gymnastics to protect the belief system. And It's quite instructive to read, really. It says, "Dear reader, isn't it amazing that no one knows the date of the most important birth in the history of mankind?" Well, if it didn't take place, not really, mate. We know the birth dates of many famous ancient men, from the Caesars to the Pharaohs, and in fact in Egypt birthday celebrations can be documented back to the 13th century BC. So if Jesus is real, and the story is real, and the historical setting is real, so why not the same with Jesus, as the writer points out, or claims is the date of the most important birth in the history of mankind? I think there's more to know. But he says, but there is not a single reference in all 66 books of the Bible, and not one mention in early church literature pinpointing the date of Christ's birth. Now, here's the gymnastics coming. Here's the I'm going to disappear up my own backside and I'm going to take a torch coming. Obviously, God did not want us to know the date Christ was born! Exclamation mark. We must remember that the Son of God pre-existed from eternity with the Father, just like in Babylon. Perhaps for us to affix a date of birth to Christ, who always existed, is to detract from his divinity. One thing is certain: if God wanted the church to celebrate the birth of his Son, he would have told us to do so. Reasonable minds, did he just say that? Reasonable minds can only conclude that the reason the Bible is silent on the subject is because it was never God's intention for Christ's birthday to be celebrated. And so you've got Christians who believe the whole story. You've got people like this who see that whole part of the story is nonsense, but then protect the belief system of Jesus by this sort of thing. Then you've got the New Age mentality that dismisses the Jesus story biblically, but has, what is it, Sananda, whatever, this Christ figure in New Age belief. It's just different versions of the same belief system download. Being unable to get across that chasm of understanding that not only is parts of it not true, none of it's true. It's all just a repeating historical story and narrative. And then this finishes, however, we do celebrate Christ's death. It is through his death and atoning sacrifice that we are reconciled to God and have forgiveness of sin. Every time we partake of the communion of the bread and cup, we are celebrating the death that purchased our redemption. I won't even start with that. But God didn't want us to celebrate Christ's birthday, so he didn't tell us. And that all came, in fact, from the ancient world, the December the 25th midwinter festival period, which became Christmas, Saturnalia. But God did want us to celebrate his death. Kind of a bit perverse. And when is his death celebrated? Imagine celebrating someone's death. I don't know. Maybe it's me. When do we celebrate the death of Jesus? Easter. And Easter comes from the very same source that Christmas does. The ancient pre-Christian world. In Babylon, the goddess was known as Queen Semiramis or Ishtar or Easter. Easter comes from Babylon and the ancient world in general that followed a Babylonian type religion. Easter eggs, Babylon. Bunnies, symbol of Semiramis Ishtar, Babylon. Hot cross buns come from the pagan world. And so we are constantly taking on beliefs because of repetition and because of our location and our family and environment, in the sense that if you are born in the Islamic world to an Islamic family, you are almost certainly going to become a Muslim and believe in the Muslim religion and the Muslim story. If you are born into a Jewish family and a Jewish community, you are almost certainly going to believe in the stories of Judaism and follow their rituals. And if you're born into a Christian family, there's a very, very good chance you are going to go through your life believing in the Christian story. Indeed, there are people of other religions that believe in the Christian story. It's just a web. So, location and upbringing equals information people download from the earliest ages that then becomes their either conscious or unconscious belief system. And this story of Jesus, Christmas, Easter, and the way it's accepted to be true when it's not, the way festivals are believed to be because of this when they're not, is just a classic example of how people take on perceptions for no other reason than where they were born, where they were brought up, the environment, in other words, information download to which they were subjected as they were brought up, and the repetition of information which becomes a belief system. And if there's one New Year's resolution that would change people's lives and change collectively human society, it would be if people stopped taking their beliefs unquestioningly off the shelf, stopped downloading their perceptions from others, and start with a blank sheet of paper and say, anything comes on here has to go through my filter, my research, my feeling, my intuition, whatever. And only then does it get on this piece of paper. In other words, only then do I accept its validity in becoming part of my perception. And I tell you what, if people did that on a vast scale, if people did that just individually, they would be shocked at how much they have believed consciously and again unconsciously during their life that had no validity whatsoever. And if more do that, then more will see through the perception deception that keeps the human race in such unquestioning servitude. So let's go and take some questions of, I tell them, many and various kinds. This is from Miki, Ezat. It says, do you have any information about the so-called Morgellons, and what are your thoughts? Well, funnily enough, I've just had a new book published called Phantom Self, brackets, and How to Find the Real One. And there's a chapter in that which I think is possibly the most important chapter I've ever written. And Morgellons is connected into that tapestry of information that's pulled together in that chapter. It relates to transhumanism and assimilating the human race into technology. It relates to chemtrails, these chemical trails that come from aircraft systematically into the atmosphere, which has been going on now for decades. And what's in them? They have been analysed, and metals and poisons have been found in them. Quite systematic. They are cumulatively destroying human health and destroying the environment. Things like aluminium are in them. But what is less talked about, but I talk about in some detail in Phantom Self, is they also contain nanotechnology. And nanotechnology is well beyond the ability of anyone to see it, so small. And it can be breathed in. And what happens with sufferers of this condition called Morgellons, which started to appear just as the chemtrails began, is that they have these synthetic material come up through the skin, and has a life of its own. It seems to have the ability to think and respond. And they pull one out that comes through the skin, these fibers, these synthetic fibers. And then there's another one, and they replicate. And I have seen it suggested, and I think this may well be correct, that everyone is breathing this stuff in, and it's being assimilated and absorbed by most people. But what we call sufferers of Morgellons are people whose immune system is rejecting it and fighting it. Thus, we see what happens with Morgellons patients. If you go onto a picture search engine and put in Morgellons disease, then you'll see exactly what I'm talking about and what people are suffering around the world. They have this crawling sensation under the skin, things moving inside their bodies. I mean, it's extraordinary, horrible. And when you put the pieces together, it's very, very clear that what's in chemtrails and Morgellons disease are fundamentally connected. And what I do in Phantom Self is go into why this is happening and what the end goal is of what is happening. And that's why I feel it's the most important chapter I've ever written in terms of seeing where all this, I won't say multiple conspiracy, because in the end it's one conspiracy, but this multifaceted global conspiracy is actually designed to go. And it'll shock a lot of people, but knowing it is having the ability to avoid it And that's the whole point of what I do. Not to be proved right. Oh, that David Icke said this. That is not the goal. The goal is to alert people so that it stops happening, and that's what keeps me going, year after year after year. Okay, next one. What are your views concerning remote viewing? That's from Peter Marshall. Remote viewing is a fact and can be explained. Remote viewing came to light when government intelligence insiders, some time ago now, started talking about the fact that they were involved in remote viewing projects within the military and within the intelligence networks. And remote viewing relates to being able, for instance, for someone, say me sitting here now, and to project my, what I would call point of attention, somewhere else, into a room, into another location. And through that relocating of my point of attention, be able to see and hear what's going on there. And one of the big reasons why the reality of remote viewing makes perfect sense is that what is happening as I sit here, as you sit there, is that our infinite level of awareness is projecting its point of attention into this reality, into this body, holographic projection, and being able to not only see and hear in this location, but interact with it. And the basics of remote viewing is exactly that, except there's not the interaction. And so remote viewing is just a smaller, lesser version of what we call human life. And when this body projection ceases to be at what we call death, then the point of attention moves, relocates, and we continue with our eternity. That's why when people say to me, well, who are we then? We are infinite awareness having an experience. We are infinite awareness that has focused its attention upon this tiny band of frequency that we call the human world, the physical world. And so remote viewing from that perspective is perfectly straightforward. It's just a lesser version of that. And it allows people in the military and the intelligence community to literally see and listen to things when they're not even at that location. And I remember I spoke at an event in San Francisco, one of these big kind of New Age festivals, call them expos. Don't think they're going now. But this was back in the 1990s. And a lady came up to me and she said, I just want to talk to you. She said, our husband had died by then, but she was quite young actually. She said, my husband was recruited into the American military psychic assassination squad, which caused my ears prick up. What do you mean? And she told me the story. When people go into the military and they're doing various tests and assessments, one of the things they're looking for are those with powerful psychic ability. And the most powerful are recruited into various areas of this esoteric area of military intelligence operation. And some will be turned into what they call remote viewers to do what I'm talking about here. And others are recruited into the psychic assassination squads. And what she said, this is, like I say, already be about 96, 97. She said what they used to do was sit around a table with a picture of someone they wanted to assassinate, and they would just, as an example, get all of these people that have been recruited into this squad to focus on the picture and focus on stopping the person's heartbeat. And it worked. And of course, that person's then taken out, and no one says, "Oh, it was a psychic assassination squad." No, they say, "Well, yeah, a heart attack." And the reason that it works is because everything is frequency. And when you take a picture of someone, you might see their body, their holographic projection on the picture, fair enough. But what that picture contains is the frequency of the energetic field of that projection. And so by focusing on the picture in the way that they do, that's vibrating, the picture's vibrating to a certain frequency, which is the frequency of the person in the picture. And what they're then doing is tuning themselves, their point of attention, into that frequency. At which point they have made a frequency connection with that person's, if you like, real self, or holographic self. And these projections are, on one level, electrical and electromagnetic. And so there's this electrical electromagnetic connection now between the psychic assassination squad and the person in the picture. And what makes a heartbeat? Electricity. Electromagnetic electrical focus can affect electrical systems, including those of the heart. And you know, when you hear these ghost stories and these so-called paranormal stories, which I also go into in Phantom Self, because it's very important for people to see how this works for many various reasons. So often these ghost stories and ghostly happenings relate to electrical technology. Like when I went 25, 26 years ago to see a psychic called Betty Shine, she told me then that often when she was in psychic mode and there was lots of this connection going on with other realities, things like the record player would turn on and off. And when I had my ayahuasca experience in the Brazilian rainforest in 2003, and this stupendous energy was coming through me, just extraordinary. I was in a darkened room on my own with one person sitting in a chair, and it was pitch black, you can imagine, with no lights on in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest. And they had these strip lights all around the top, all around it was a circle. And as this energy built up, and it was so powerful, I felt it coming through here. I didn't say anything to anybody, there was only one person I could say anything to, but there was music playing, and the record player started to malfunction. It turned itself off, it turned itself on. And then one of the strip lights came on, and then two, and then three. And I'm lying there with this energy coming through me, and I'm thinking, was he turning the bloody lights on for? But he hadn't. He was still sitting here. And what it was this energy coming through me, which was electrical, electromagnetic, was affecting the electrical systems of the building. And that's why so much ghostly activity relates to strange happenings with electrical equipment, like lights. All the lights flashed on and off. This is what it is. And it's why, through sheer focus of attention, these people could stop people's hearts beating. So in terms of the question of remote viewing, it's the same principle. Life's so much more fascinating when you look beyond the norm. Mola sorry about that if I got it wrong, Mola Mahasi. Do you think Donald Trump will bring change, or the same agenda will still unfold? Well, I think he's part of the agenda, Donald Trump. First of all, you don't become what he's claimed to be, a multi-billionaire, unless you're acceptable, at the very least, acceptable to the system. Because if you're not acceptable to the system, then the system will bring you down. Because you can't get that amount of money without the system's okay with it. He has come in. He's a friend of the Clintons, by the way, who is running for the other party, Hillary Clinton. And he's coming out with these claims and saying what should be done in a way that's creating fear, it's creating divide and rule. It's turning people, for instance, against the Muslim community as a whole. And it's, again, going off in a direction that ignores what's really happening, which is all this Muslim terrorism and wars against Muslim countries is engineered for a specific outcome, which I talk about at length. And it can be quite, I wouldn't say shocking, but a bit depressing sometimes to see how easy it is to manipulate, scam, and Pied Piper. Even some in the alternative research community who have supported much or some of what Trump is saying. It's like there's a default position, and the default position is the I'm an American program, the I'm a Christian program, the I'm a this program. And it's like a default position. And what you can do is, as you research information, you can get pulled a little bit, depending how powerful your default position is, out of that default position. And you can start to see things that would not accept normally. And so you can see that Muslim terrorism is manipulated. You can see that these wars against Islamic countries using Islamic people in divide and rule is manipulated. And then certain things happen, like migrant crises and some of the terrorism recently. And suddenly this guy comes out, Trump, starts saying a few things that would have felt right to the default position, and that pulls you back in. And you start talking from ear instead of ear. And that's been quite a revelation to witness some of that. And Trump could not care less about anyone except himself. That's what comes over to me. And so whatever Trump does and whatever Trump says is in some way designed to serve his interests. And if he became president of the United States, there would be mayhem in the world beyond anything we've seen up to this point. He is the living, breathing proof, in my view, that you do not have to be intelligent in the true sense of the term to become a multi-billionaire. And we'll see where it goes from here. Because if he gets the nomination, well, that's one go from here. If he doesn't, but stands as an independent, just as this guy Ross Perot did back in the days of Clinton, Bill Clinton, then we'll see another where we go from here. And that will be dividing the Republican vote, which will let Madam Hillary Clinton in. Because what Ross Perot did was stand as an independent, and his natural voting constituency was Republicans, and he split the Republican vote and Bill Clinton got in. And I would strongly suggest that wasn't by accident. So where it goes from here will, be interesting to see. But the idea that Donald Trump is different and is against the system is nonsense. People have to be careful in not relating what people say to what it appears to be saying. For example, if you attack, say you attack the Jewish community, on the face of it, you've attacked the Jewish community. Dead simple. But what if, I'm not saying this in terms of Trump, I'm giving an example of how this whole game works. What if it would benefit you to be seen as against the Jewish community when you're not? What would you do? You'd say things that on the face of it were against the Jewish community or any other community, come to that, that was relevant to what you wanted. But those within the Jewish community or within this other community, those that actually know the game, as opposed to the mass, they know that you're only saying it for effect. And, there's so many people that are being controlled by this group, whatever it is, who've attacked this group. And what do people think in the public arena? He's against that group, I support him. And actually, he's controlled by that group. So when what people say needs to be taken with not just a pinch of salt, but a truckload. And let actions speak, not words. Because Trump is very, very bad news on so many levels. And so many in the alternative research community in America would say, that's nonsense. He's saying the right things. He's saying what he thinks he needs to say, and probably what others have told him he needs to say to get the outcome that he wants. And what that outcome is, we'll see in the coming weeks. Going on from that, there's another question from Nels Oman. Which American presidential candidate would you vote for? Well, and actually there's another one here. Let's bring these together. From Tom Good, Jeremy Corbyn, Messiah, or, quote, another very naughty boy. Well, let's pull this together because it's kind of interesting. Jeremy Corbyn is, for people around the world, the recently elected, back in September I think it was, around that time, leader of the opposition Labour Party in Britain. And he has argued against Britain bombing in Syria. He clearly has genuine concern for those suffering from this systematic program of austerity, poverty, deprivation going on in Britain. And for that reason, those reasons, I welcomed the fact that he was elected leader of the Labour Party. And the reason he was elected was the rank and file members of the Labour Party all over the country, not the members of Parliament, which he now leads, because they mostly can't stand the guy and what he stands for. And the reason I welcome him as the leader of the Labour Party is because it means we're going to have at least some kind of debate over austerity and over war. And we did have that. We had debate and the much more questioning of the British bombing in Syria because Corbyn was leader. Of course, he was ignored by enough of his members of Parliament who voted with the government party, the Conservative Party of David Cameron, to actually get Parliament to agree to bombing in Syria. But at least we had some kind of debate, which we would not have had otherwise. Because what would have happened if another Labour MP that stood for the leadership had got in, it would have been nodded through, bombing in Syria. Because when you look at the vast number of Labour MPs and virtually all Conservative MPs and what's left of the Liberal Democratic MPs, the third party, they are the one-party state. The so-called consensus in what they all agree on, and bombing in Syria would have been one of them, indeed it was, even though Corbyn was leader, is there. So it's a one-party state. Same in America, of course, with the Republicans and the Democrats. And one of the candidates standing for the leadership of the presidency, the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party against Hillary Clinton is Bernie Sanders. And he is a kind of Corbyn character in that by Capitol Hill terms, he does have some sort of heart for people who are struggling. And he has most certainly understood and been the man, probably more than anyone else, and there haven't been many, who has stood up and exposed the true nature of the banks and the bankers and the corporations and the stitch-ups and its impact upon the American population. So I would say that the person I would say I would vote for if I had to in the American presidential election would be Bernie Sanders. And if I voted for anyone in Britain currently, it would be for Jeremy Corbyn. However, but, and a very, very big but, I wouldn't vote for either of them. In the sense of believing that they were going to change anything. Because within this web of deceit and conspiracy and corruption, it's multifaceted. So, Jeremy Corbyn has disconnected and is challenging that web, that agenda, in terms of bombing and war, and in terms of the austerity program. Bernie Sanders is disconnected and is challenging that web, that agenda, from the point of view of the behaviour, manipulation and corruption of bankers and corporations. Fair enough, round of applause. But unless you take a big step back and do research across the subjects to the point where you see what the game is, where they want the outcome to arrive at, and the manipulative techniques to get people there, then even though austerity and bombing Syria won't get you, even though in Sanders' case the banking scam won't get you, other parts of the web will get you. Because you won't realise there is a web. Thus you won't realise that global warming, drone bombing, etc., etc., are as much part of this web as austerity, bombing in Syria, and the banking system. And so when I look at Jeremy Corbyn, I applaud, for reasons that I've said, some of the things he's standing for and challenging. But at the same time, he's very pro, we must do something about global warming. And what is intended to be done to protect the world from global warming, which is actually a scam, is to transform the world into a centralized fascist communist dictatorship of centralized control, which is everything that, in terms of austerity, etc., and government, Jeremy Corbyn would not want, in terms of its effect on people, and more poverty and more deprivation. And Bernie Sanders is supporting things that are all part of the web and part of the agenda, while challenging the banking part. So while, you know, it's to be applauded that they are there and in their way and in their own limited area of how they see the world, they are challenging things that I think need challenging. The idea that they will change anything unless they see the web is simply not going to happen. And before politicians are going to change anything of significance, they've got to see the big picture and where it's designed to go and how it's taking us there. And then maybe they can have an impact of significance. But until then, no chance. No chance. Mary Marks. What do I think of the PTT trade deal? These trade deals, the transatlantic, trans-Pacific trade deals, are being negotiated in secret, because if the public knew about them, there would be no need for hair curlers. The hair curling industry would go out of business. What is being negotiated in secret is to transform the world, as always planned, and has been in my books all these years, is to transform the world into a corporation-controlled society, where corporations who have far, far more resources and money and wealth than most governments, they will have the ability to go to a world corporate court and take governments to court for doing things that the corporations don't like. What is being negotiated are laws of copyright that are so outrageous, so extreme, so mind-blowing in the idea that they could even be considered, never mind agreed, that, as a story on my website in the last few days pointed out, if certain things go ahead, not just within the trade deals, but within the European Union, and they're all connected, of course, it's all part of the same web of centralized control, that even taking pictures of things that you own could be breach of copyright and find yourself in legal action. They're stitching up the world. That's what these trade deals are doing. And the idea is to negotiate them in secret, pass them through as quick as possible through the parliaments and Congress, that they become law of the land before anyone's really cottoned on to what it means. And we saw this with the European Union. You know, things would be passed through and passed through and passed through, and it would be covered by the media. Oh, yeah, this has been passed or that's been passed. Oh, yeah, what was it? No debate that people have any say in and contributing to. And then people go down the shops or they go about their work and they say, what do you mean? We can't do this anymore. Well, that's banned, that's illegal. What's happened? What's happened? Well, what's happened? It's all been done in secret. And it's been pushed through very, very quickly. So now it's law of the land and you are subjected to it without you even realizing it's happened until you're faced with it. This is what's planned with these trade deals. And they are chilling in what they plan to introduce. And, you know, I have felt, and I've said for a long time, that 2016, 2017, 2018 are going to decide the long-term future of human society. They really are. And we must start making all this the priority of our lives. Because if we put anything before it, even family occasions, whatever, if something else needs doing, we may think we're doing the right thing in the short term, but in the longer term, we're not. The work that I do means that I miss things, family things that others would not miss. But my attitude is this. My biggest contribution to, for instance, my grandkids and my children is to do everything I can to head off and alert people so it's headed off what is planned for this world and what's unfolding by the day. That's my biggest contribution, and that's my focus. And so if I have to miss this family occasion or that family occasion because this is something I have to do to advance that that goal that I have, then that will have to happen. Because if my grandkids, for instance, say to me some time from now, what were you doing, Granddad, when all this was coming in? I don't want to have to say nothing, but I did attend the school play. I want to say everything I bloody could, darling. And that is, I would suggest, where we need to go from here as we move towards 2016. Make this the priority. Because if we don't, then we'll take the consequences. But I am very, very optimistic that we are starting to move towards a point where the numbers of people in awareness that the world's not like they thought it was is starting to reach a point where it can have some kind of impact. And that's why in 2016, 2017, 2018, my feet ain't going to move. Because this is the epicenter of heading this off, these next 3 years, starting now. And the more that can be involved in that, the more that can look and say, how do I contribute, and do it, the more likely, obviously, it is that this will be headed off. And I've not worked this last 25, 26 years full-time, constantly on this, to see it happen. So, well, the next video we're going to be in, next video cast we're going to be in 2016. So, have a happy new year, and come on, let's get on with it. See you next week. Bye.